Then we will move on to the next order of business, which is introductions and presentations. And I know we put this in the works several months ago and are very grateful that representatives from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission are here to do a presentation on coyotes. Chris Turner is speaking, and I think there's other representatives. You're welcome to introduce them as well. And thank you all so much for being with us this evening. I think we have a larger attendance than normal tonight in our audience, and I'm guessing they're here for you, not necessarily us. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much for having us tonight. I did want to make some introductions if I could. I'm Chris Turner. I'm a district wildlife biologist with the Wildlife Resources Commission. I work a 13-county district, which includes Dare County and 12 other counties as well. I'm mighty happy to be here tonight. I'm mighty happy to have some of my co-workers here with me as well. We have Deanna Noble, who is a technical assistance biologist for the coastal plain. Then we have my supervisor, Mr. Evan Stanford. He is the coastal private land supervisor. So he deals with all the coastal counties, basically 3 districts, and 3 district biologists and a technical assistance biologist. And then we have Jessie Burkhead, who is our extension biologist, extension wildlife biologist out of the Raleigh office. So she has statewide duties and gets a lot more phone calls than I do. So just glad to have them with us this evening. I wanted to start out just by saying this is one of the first times I've ever had a chance to watch myself talk. It's kind of weird, but I really appreciate Ms. Quidley making that presentation available. That talk was given to the Nags Head Town Council back in March, and during that talk it was a pretty extensive talk on coyote biology, trying to educate people and just to let people understand what coyotes are and what they're not, and also to kind of get into some of the management of that species here in this state. So I really appreciate the making that available prior to this. We set that up hoping that we would be able to have everybody informed of the general information so that we would have more time for questions and answers tonight. So I do have a few slides with me tonight. You will notice that they are very similar to the end of that presentation. Basically what we refer to as a wildlife toolbox. There are certain tools that are available for managing nuisance situations and damage situations, and there are also tools available as a management tool for managing a population on an annual basis and over time. So I did want to have a few slides available, basically dealing with that particular toolbox. But if I could, I want to focus tonight on what the tools that are available to us as private homeowners, as municipalities, and as citizens of this part of the state in particular. So basically, this will be looking at how to apply the tools that are available currently. If we can go to the first one, I picked out a couple of slides from the presentation that I think some of you saw earlier. But just a couple of things that really kind of stand out that make coyotes a very unique species to manage in this state. And that's one of the slides that I think really shows one of the challenges of managing coyotes across a large scale is that they're highly mobile. You can see there the little red mark down where that is where a coyote was satellite collared at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And you can see that it was collared in March. Between March and July, that coyote wound up in Northern Virginia. So that starts to tell a little bit of a story, I think, about what the biological needs of coyotes are and their ability to be highly mobile, which presents its own challenges. You go to the next one. When we talk about home ranges of different species, we talk about the area of habitat that they need to meet all of their annual needs or seasonal needs as well. So annually, we have coyotes that may have home ranges, basically an area that they use, but between 2,000 and 7,000 acres, could exceed that as well. You saw one 225-mile jaunt up into other states. But knowing what the potential home ranges of these animals are, I wanted to kind of lay it over the Outer Banks. So what we're looking at there, I think you're looking at two blocks, one over 6,000 acres and one over almost 8,000 acres. So you're looking at close to 14,000 acres of habitat. That's food, water, shelter, and space that wildlife can use here on the Outer Banks. You don't see any houses in this particular photograph, but they're really dense areas of housing. It's really broken up into small patches and with some bigger blocks of wooded areas, dune land, and other open areas as well, where wildlife makes its living. So that includes an interspersion of habitat throughout residential areas. Which when I see this, what I see is that you could see one coyote from the top to the bottom potentially. So when you start to get a lot of reports of seeing coyotes, sometimes it may be a little bit, the numbers may be not quite as high as it appears, because one individual may be seen different places because they're moving quite a bit. So that I just kind of wanted to highlight that fact. We also have what we call transient coyotes, and those are coyotes that they never settle down into a home range. They're constantly on the move, looking for a place to settle down and establish a territory with other coyotes. So with the home ranges of resident coyotes, you also have transient coyotes that are constantly moving, looking for a place to settle down. So that kind of adds to the full movement that you can see on an annual basis. Okay. I'm not going to get all into the details on some of these slides because I think many of you have already seen it. But I think it's important to understand that just because you see a coyote doesn't necessarily mean that coyote is causing a problem. I think a lot of phone calls are generated by people repeatedly seeing animals, which may indicate an issue. You can have coyotes that habitually use residential areas because of food sources there, and I think that's where you start to see them repeatedly in the same place. That may kind of fly a red flag as far as some precautions that we need to take, or some conversations we need to have as a community to make sure that we're doing what we can to reduce the potential of animals being habituated to people or food. I think it's pretty safe to say that when we have coyotes, we got coyotes. Most of the solutions that we tend to focus on are preventative in nature, meaning that you can't necessarily say when you're going to have an issue pop up, but there are certainly some things that we can do across the board as a community that probably reduce the chances of some things popping up on your place. And I think that's a pretty important point to make. One of the things that we always have to focus on is food sources within residential areas. I think it's really interesting. Prior to this year, I had very few calls about coyotes on the Outer Banks, even though they've been documented here since 2009. Just recently, it all kind of just popped up. And it really, the calls that have been spawned by coyote sightings have really kind of taken the place of a lot of other wildlife issues that we have dealt with historically, including raccoons, foxes, and possums. It's always, their food sources for those species are also available. And I think to deal with raccoons, we try to reduce food sources to keep them from staying around individual pieces of property. That's the first step, and the same thing applies for these other species as well, including coyotes. I think the preventative nature of things, would come down to even trying to deal with small pets on your own property. It's fairly well documented that if you got coyotes that are hanging around somebody's house or hanging around a subdivision, that's a really good time to talk to your neighbors and let them know that if you have a small dog or you keep cats outside, that they really need to keep a handle on things the best that they can to protect those pets. That would even include fencing around residential areas to the best that you can. I know sometimes you can't do what you wish you could, but yeah, that's always something to consider as a means of preventing some of the issues that can arise. Okay. Real quickly, I'm going to hit 3 tools that are available right now. They were in the last presentation, and once we kind of roll through the 3 tools, then I'm just going to have a chance to answer any questions that we can answer, and we've got several people that can help out with that as we go. So basically, the 3 tools are recreational hunting, trapping by licensed trappers, and depredation permits as well. Okay. Before we get into talking about hunting, it's very important to understand that Dare County is one of 5 counties in the state that has a special set of coyote regulations at this time, special rules when it comes to hunting coyotes in this county and 4 other counties. Basically, there's a special coyote hunting permit that has to be obtained in addition to a hunting license. Permit's free of charge. You can get it off of our website. Mandatory reporting for any coyotes that are taken during hunting and taken for any reason. And the other part of it is the shooting hours during most of the state includes nighttime hours. In these 5 counties, the shooting hours do not include nighttime. They basically start at a half hour before sunrise, and they extend until a half hour after sunset. So there's no nighttime hunting in these 5 counties under special rules. So that just have to keep that in mind as we look at all the options that are available. Okay. Regulated hunting is one means of reducing a surplus of wildlife species over time on an annual basis. We certainly have a surplus of coyotes that we can manage somewhat through hunting. One thing that's important to understand is that hunting may or may not be a tool everywhere. I think when we start to look at the Outer Banks and we start to look at urban and suburban type areas, residential type areas, there are restrictions in place by local ordinance for safety purpose or other purposes that may or may not allow the type of hunting that some people would want to do. So that may or may not be a tool in all places as far as managing numbers annually. Okay. Recreational trapping, we do have a trapping season, statewide season, and in this part of the state, it runs from December 1st through the end of February. Basically, we have licensed trappers who trap for recreational purposes, trap on the side for money, for fur. That is still available as a tool for managing numbers on an annual basis. Again, that may or may not be an option in all places, but it certainly is part of the toolbox that's available for managing populations on an annual basis. I think it's at the same time, I think we have to remember that whenever we have coyote issues, nuisance type issues, then any coyotes that are taken right now without hunting or trapping are taken by vehicles here, road kills. They're also lost to disease on an annual basis or injuries or other things that happen to individuals. Hunting and trapping is one way of you can't stop all the problems that way, but you certainly can remove individuals that are causing issues that way. So that's an annual tool that's available in a lot of places. Okay. Like I said, just seeing a coyote is not necessarily a problem, but sometimes we do have situations that arise on private property in particular, where there is wildlife damage, meaning there's economic loss because of wildlife, or because there's an aggressive animal that has popped up that has to be taken out of season, and depredation permits are available to deal with individual situations, very specific situations that may pop up here and there on private lands. So what can happen is you may have situations that arise on one piece of property. Well, the owner of that property certainly has the recourse of seeking out the options for dealing with the property loss or the damage that's occurring there. And it only applies to that piece of property for the owner of the property. So that allows the take of an animal outside of the trapping season or hunting season. It also gives the option of allowing somebody to assist somebody on a permit. So it opens the door for some additional options for dealing with individual animals that are causing problems. And this isn't just coyotes either. It includes other species as well that are actually causing problems for individual property owners. Any animals that are taken have to be reported. The permit is restrictive in nature, but it is set up and available to be able to handle specific situations. One thing about the special coyote rules in these counties is that even though we have wildlife damage control agents who are certified to write depredation permits for many species to private property owners, coyote depredation permits in these 5 counties have to be issued by the Wildlife Commission. So I would be a contact there if somebody has a specific situation that we would need to address. It would result in a field investigation and then basically deciding what we need to do as far as whether a permit would apply to that situation. So they're a little bit different in these 5 counties, but that is certainly something that we can help people address. There's also the potential for a permit to be issued for municipal property as well. We're working on some of the details in that right now, but right now it looks like it would come through written request for a permit for specific situations on town property, that are owned by town property. We cannot issue a permit to somebody for somebody else's property. So the permit is issued to the property owner with somebody else listed on it to assist them if they request that. Again, everything has to be reported on the permit. Okay. The toolbox that I'm talking about, I think a really good way of becoming familiar with it and understanding where it would apply and how you might consider the tools is available on our website at ncwildlife.org. We actually have all the special coyote rules are available there. I put a copy up here. It also includes permit contact information, how to obtain a permit in the event that there are a situation arises that would necessitate a permit being issued. Okay. In these 5 counties, I wanted to put this up because any permit that's issued, again, is restrictive in nature. And it all certainly emphasizes the fact that in these 5 counties, we could have canids other than coyotes that are present. And if anybody was to identify something other than a coyote, or you're not sure what you've caught, then there would be contact that would have to be made to identify a coyote versus a wolf in other parts of this area. So that's always something to consider in any of these 5 counties. Okay. Again, I refer back to our website. When you look at our website, we actually have information and access to individuals who are certified through testing to write depredation permits for many species. And they can also assist people with that type of removal under a permit. Again, the permits for coyotes have to be issued by the commission, but we actually have maintain a list of licensed damage control agents who do a lot of that work to assist people with specific situations. Currently, I think we've got 9 damage control agents listed for Dare County, and then we also maintain a licensed trapper list. Those are people that if somebody had a piece of land that they wanted to have somebody trap recreationally on their behalf with written permission and a trapping license, we maintain a list of people who have said that they would be interested in trapping different species, including coyotes. Okay. Again, off of our homepage, when you look at have a wildlife problem, it takes you down to a list of damage control agents, licensed trappers, and also the information pertaining to depredation permits and what it is required in order to make that request. Okay. I'm always available if you have situations that come up that you're not sure about, or you have questions about, or you're just seeking some guidance on what you can do or what would work the best. I'm always available to assist with those calls. A lot of times, we may make a site visit if we're not sure what we need to do. But my phone number is right here, and you can call me anytime that you have things come up that you're just not sure about. So I'm available for that. The coexisting with wildlife publications that I think you have there, I appreciate those being distributed. There for information purposes. I really think that a lot of the homeowners associations that are corporate bodies that want to provide information to their residents, I think that this is a really good resource in order to educate people first, so that once they need to ask questions, they kind of know what to ask that'll be effective for them. So that's, I think there may be one more, there may not. Okay. But I wanted to get through those things and just have a time to, if you have any questions or concerns. I know a lot of people have questions when it comes down to what they're seeing or what they're not sure about, and I think this will be a good time to ask those questions, and maybe we can see about answering them.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you don't mind standing by, you have questions from the board?
I don't have any questions, but I do appreciate the information. I'm going to put this out on any way I can for other people.
Thank you.
I'm kind of curious how they got here. They swim or they take the bridge, or?
I think both, yeah.
It's swim in the Alligator River, but I guess they could. So.
I think there's very few barriers when it comes to things seeking out the place that they need to be. The picture of a satellite collared coyote moving across multiple counties and moving into another state, I think that tells the story. There's no telling how many bodies of water, how many subdivisions, how many highways it made it across. And I think it was interesting when I was able to speak to Nag's Head a few months ago. That very morning, somebody showed a picture of a coyote that had been run over on the bridge in the Currituck. And I think that confirms a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways of things moving around, but
they do the dog paddle, right?
I would assume so, yes.
So it's
I would
not
say,
that difficult, right?
yes, sir.
Is there through your office or department, any type of, obviously you track some, but overall management program or count program to know whether the numbers have truly been increasing, or whether it's just the movement in the sightings and with social media postings, and just wonder what type of management or control you guys have in place, or do you?
Yeah, I don't have a population estimate for this piece of property, which we call the Outer Banks. The population estimates, pure numbers, hard numbers are very difficult to achieve. We do maintain harvest records across the state, And I think what we generally look at and look towards is an index of harvest, where over time, when you see the numbers of the harvest increase, I think you can make some assumptions about maybe the amount of effort that's going into harvesting coyotes, plus the distribution and population of the numbers of coyotes as well.
And by harvest, are you meaning trapping and reporting, or how do you define harvest?
During the trapping season, we actually maintain some surveys, trapper surveys to licensed trappers, and we also do some additional surveys as well on a maybe not every single year, but over time we collect some of that data, and what we generally get back is some paper copy surveys. We also can look at fur buyer reports as far as how many of certain species are being trapped and sold for fur. The fur market is certainly not what it was in the past, so the incentive to do a lot of that work, that may benefit, us long term is probably slipped away to some extent. But there are still people who trap recreationally. It's a great management tool for the resource, over time. So, I can certainly put you in contact with some of those numbers. It's really interesting to see what that harvest has done since the 90s and early 2000s, by region.
It'd be interesting, and we can then share it.
Yes.
I have just a few more questions, if it's you mentioned that this year, I think, or at least since last year, you're having fewer calls related to fox, raccoon, and possum, and they're kind of being replaced with coyote calls. Can you make any deductions from that in the sense of, are those populations decreasing, and could that be linked to the number of coyotes, or is that too much to extrapolate from that?
I think it's too much. That's a great question, because they may be linked at some level. It's just hard to say, exactly what the linkage is. There's no doubt that if you want fewer rodents and you want fewer of some species, coyotes kind of balance things out as they're an opportunistic omnivore, meaning they don't just eat animal matter. They don't just eat small mammals and rodents, but they also can eat fruit. They can eat. I've had complaints in watermelon fields, where you had coyotes eating people's watermelon. So that's part of why they are so flexible in the habitat that they use. There's not a whole lot of question. I think that research has shown that coyotes and red fox populations are linked together. Coyotes tend to displace red foxes because they use some of the same habitats, some of the same areas, and they're territorial in nature that way, as opposed to gray foxes, which can climb trees and get away from coyotes. I think that's one thing that has come up several times, is that certainly you could see things that more or less kind of balance out where some populations are concerned, because it is another predator, that uses some of those resources.
The restrictions that apply to the 5 counties that were put in place, it's my understanding it was put in place to try to help the red wolf population. Is that correct? Like, to make sure that it doesn't go extinct? Is that?
Well, the Albemarle Peninsula was the red wolf restoration area. It's a red wolf project area, and a couple of years ago, there were some lawsuits against the Wildlife Commission that resulted in a federal injunction that opened the door for us to change our coyote rules by necessity to meet a federal injunction. We still have some of those lawsuits are still in play. So there's a lot of things that I don't know as far as what the future holds, but that was where the special rules came up. It started out as temporary rules.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I still saw the word temporary in there, but we don't have a definition of temporary. There's not a date that say it goes away. It's just
No, not at this time that I'm aware of.
again, this might be a question you wouldn't have the answer to, but can you make any deduction that since that has changed and the way we can try to manage in the timeline with Coyotes, has there been an increase in potentially linked to that, to this change?
Well, I think one thing that's pretty clear, the rules affect coyote hunting at this time. And at least here in residential type settings, suburban type areas, I think the impact of hunting is probably very small here on the Outer Banks, just because of the land and the density of people and local ordinance. And, I think there's some restrictions there that probably don't allow that to be as productive a tool for managing coyote numbers on an annual basis. So it's hard to say how it all falls out, but certainly in a setting where you can't discharge a firearm in particular for good reasons in a lot of places, that's something that I think you don't have as much of an effect by changing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think my last question. We do have folks in the room that intentionally, purposely came out tonight for this, and several of them I may have received calls from, or you all may have received calls from. And their question may be, if they're seeing them, they're concerned, they're nervous, what guidance can you offer them? I know it probably relates back to the PowerPoint, but what specific guidance could you say if you are really nervous as a homeowner or property owner? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think I would go back to the statement that we made in the beginning, that just seeing them and knowing they're here is not necessarily a problem. I think where the issues arise is where you have actual situations that come up that may be very short-term in nature, or they may be taking some time, where you particularly, we always tend to go back to food sources around people, and what we don't want is wildlife species that are habituated to people. They tolerate people around people's yards and that kind of thing, because here they don't have much of a choice when they're passing through, and we got wildlife living all around us. But I think the first thing that I would probably do as a community is to continue to give the message that we're trying to prevent things the best we can regarding habituated animals and behavior that would not fit well with residential areas. I think when you take that step, you're doing one of the things that you can do. I guess the other part of it is that when it comes down to the numbers of animals that are here, we don't have a hard number. We don't know how many exactly, because it changes annually. It changes all the time, I think. But what we certainly would see as a tool would be that anything that removes some individuals on an annual basis would probably have the effect of possibly cutting down on animals that have that behavior that becomes a problem. You can deal directly with animals that have that behavior. We've talked about those tools, basically damage control type tools. And then we would say that if you have anything that allows the annual take of some animals by legal means, you also are doing what you can to manage that population at some lower level. It's just hard to say. Some years are better for them than others. I think it's real easy to use the word that I've heard so many times, and that's eradicate. That means down to zero. And I think looking at what we've looked at tonight, I think it's pretty clear that that's not a good goal. So I think what we would always work towards is education. That people would communicate with each other when there is a problem, that they would be able to contact somebody who can assist them with that problem. And then the communication part of it, I think, is critical. And I've been so pleased to see how the towns have worked so hard to make sure that there's an avenue for people to go in these discussions. You know, I think it's real easy to never hear about things, but I've been very impressed with the hard work that has gone into making sure that the resources are sent the right way and that people can have their concerns addressed or questions answered, because a big part of that is the educational component, where people identify what's a problem and what's not. If there is an actual problem, then there's tools. But you know, the annual tool is population management. You know, and that's it's a real challenge when you get into this is a very unique situation, a very unique place. And I was thinking on the way over here this evening that you know, I'm not seeing the traffic on the road that I was seeing before Labor Day, and all the visitors have left. But I think when it gets back to Coyotes, I think a lot of people consider them visitors, but they're not visitors. You know, they're residents. And I think once we kind of understand that, then we can work together to prevent and reduce what we can reduce, and to manage things the best that we can on an annual basis.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I certainly appreciate you and your colleagues taking the time to be here, but also, you know, publishing your number and making it really easy for folks who do want to follow up with you afterwards. I appreciate that. And I think my takeaway here is, you know, as communities, doing the best we can to eliminate available food source. So don't leave dog bowls and water bowls and cat bowls and food out overnight. Take that in, secure your trash and your garbage so they're not accessible, so that's not a food source. And then if you do feel like you have a specific issue on your property or your neighbor's property, you can contact you for guidance,
Sure.
but there are get permits and trappers and go through that process during the time that it's allowed and try to manage it that way.
You know, I think the effective use of the tools that are available is very important. And I think a lot of people are just kind of learning what the toolbox allows and what the toolbox supplies. And I really had hoped, I really appreciate that you showed the first part of the video tonight, because this is really where the rubber hits the road, to give somebody that they can call when they say, you know what, I need to talk to somebody. You know, I'm more than glad to do that. Mrs. Quidley and Jesse Burkhead in the Raleigh office, I think they've had some discussion about working on some links to tie the town website in to some of this information that you provided tonight. And I think that goes a long ways to kind of helping people feel comfortable with what's an issue. So more than glad to receive those calls.
The video that was shown, it started at 4:45 this evening, but if people didn't get here before, it can be accessed through our webpage. If you missed that, you can tune in from home or at whatever point to get some of that information. So thank you very, very much for your time this evening.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'll just let me know if you need anything else on my end.
Thanks to all your colleagues too. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
You said they displaced red foxes. What about red wolves? Do they breed with red wolves at all, or are they wolves predators, or how does that?
Yeah, I think that gets into a whole nother realm of discussion about how all that would work on the ground. Certainly you get canids that they're all canids. So I kind of leave it there.
Our animal control officer has a question for you in the back.
Yes.
Mr. Turner, if the food source wasn't readily available for however size colony that you may have, would they continue on to migrate away? They wouldn't be, as you call it, the resident, if the food source is not there?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the food sources that we're talking about with pet food and table scraps and food that may be available, you know, that this could be provided by people, that's one food source. But when you get out there and start looking, there's plenty of natural food present, and they can alter to match their needs, on a seasonal basis.
So most definitely feral cat colonies, establishing those is not a good thing. That would help keep them here because they.
Well, I can't get into domestic animals, but one thing that I think is always important to remember is free food. If you feed one thing, a lot of times you feed everything, and that's not just talking about that.
Right.
Just talking about I know people that have fed their pets in their yard by broadcasting food in their yard. Now it's their dog or cat that they're feeding, but by doing that, they're also feeding other animals as well.
Now they do have a tendency to take the path of least resistance.
Whatever's the easiest and benefits them the most.
Just like
They're opportunistic, yes. So I think that's where the discussion that comes in with the community to have a discussion within a subdivision to say, you know what, we're seeing a coyote over here all the time, and having that discussion about if anybody is feeding on intentionally or by accident. That's the time for everybody to take a look around and say we're gonna try and do what we can here. You can't control all food sources because there's a lot of natural food, available, plenty. But we can work to keep them from being habituated towards residential areas, and I think at that point you're doing what you can do to a great extent. You'll never know the effect that you have sometimes, but if you don't have the problems as regularly, I think you can say that you're probably doing a good thing.
We'll take one more question from the floor, two more questions, and then probably what I'd ask is, folks, if you don't mind, if you're going to be here for a few minutes after the meeting so we can keep moving forward with the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe folks can meet with you in the hallway out there, but a couple more questions, then we'll do that so we can keep moving with the agenda. Skip, and then...
You talked about private property and town property, but we've got a lot of federal property here, and oftentimes in this neighborhood here, it's adjacent to, we've had some discussion about coyotes following people to their property and then going back. How is that issue addressed?
Well, I think that's where the smaller holdings that you have, the more land holdings that you have, the more complicated the discussion gets. Certainly, it's unless you have a cooperative effort where everybody kind of has a discussion and says, here's what we're going to do together. I think it's very difficult to address that part of it. I actually spoke with, worked quite a bit with Aaron McCall at Nags Head Woods, and that's one of the biggest chunks of undeveloped property here. And we talked on the way over here. They are always working towards the deer part of it. They allow recreational hunting on that property. They're in the urban archery season to help have some benefits to the community as well when it comes to higher deer numbers. It's all works very well. And he certainly brought up that he has no restriction there that doesn't allow archery equipment to take a coyote while you're deer hunting, that kind of thing. You probably don't wind up with a lot of numbers that way, but certainly when it comes down to one individual that may be causing a problem somewhere, there's nothing wrong with working at it that way. But I think it's very difficult to go across property lines and determine a solution on somebody else's property. Yes.
I'm one of the people that's called Sheila a couple times. My family is sick of me talking about the coyotes, but I live on the Park Service, so I've seen them in my yard a lot, and they don't seem the least bit afraid of me. I mean, I do have cats, but since I've seen the first one, it's like they spend little time outside. I don't feed outside, I don't leave food, I don't throw scraps to, have a little recycle, whatever, but, so I've done a lot of reading, and a lot of it's centered around wildlife researches in California, where, it's a major problem, and what they've said is with each generation in these urban areas, the coyotes become more emboldened. I mean, they're not afraid, and so, and California is one of those, let's try to coexist, so they have more attacks on pets and children, and I mean, it does happen, and so, you know, you say, well, if there's a problem, well, the problem might be the first time I encounter that coyote when I want to walk to the bike path to get to the monument, or, I mean, can you address that aggressive issue, like on the rise in what people have said to you?
Well, I think the first question that I would ask is, what are we doing now? That would be the first question. What are property owners doing now that would assist in reducing the potential? What are we doing on a larger scale than that, potentially, to manage numbers on an annual basis? And I think when you start to answer the question, I think number one is it's very difficult to say what will and won't happen, over time. But if the tools in the toolbox, if we use what's available, we're doing basically what we can do. I don't know how to stop everything from happening with the individual coyote, other than to really work hard to do what we're able to do, to manage numbers and to manage behavior that way. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's like a lot of situations, it's very difficult to say that we'll be at zero with any of this. I would say we won't be, when it comes down to it. They're here to stay. I don't think there's a whole lot of question. The numbers are going to fluctuate up and down over time for lots of reasons. But, I think right now I really see that we're in an educational phase, because I think a lot of people didn't know we had them to start with. I've talked to people that are from Arizona, other places that have always had coyotes, and they say, hey, we got coyotes now. It's just like, it's headed right towards where they came from. And I don't know how to say that that's not going to be that way. But I think the education, the awareness, so that people can do what they're able is critical. I don't know if that answers your question all the way or not, but when it comes down to individual coyotes, there's certainly some options out there when you are having a problem.
And do you mind being here for a few minutes if anyone wants to catch up with you for
No,
personal questions? Is that okay?
I'll be glad to, and my phone number, you can call it any time. If you don't get me right then, I'll get back with you. But I think together we can kind of work through things that come up that people are not sure about, or that are obviously a problem. We can always work on that. So
Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you
so
for
much
having
your
us.
time.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.